Good evening, everyone. My name is Jane Piper. I'm the city librarian for the Toronto Library. And I am delighted to welcome you all to the Bram and Bluma Appel Salon tonight for what I think will be a very interesting program. It's a bittersweet night for us here at the library because we have had the pleasure of having Mayor David Miller at so many of our beginnings, at various branch openings, at the celebration of our annual Keep Toronto Reading Festival, at the launch of the Sun Life Museum and Arts Pass program, which is a wonderful program that allows families to borrow a pass from the library to visit our leading cultural institutions for free. And just last week, he was here for the Toronto Book Awards presentation. So I suppose it is only fitting that he's here at the end of his 7 years to share with us his experiences and his final words on being the Mayor of Toronto. So let's get to it, and let me start by introducing John Barber, who will be our interviewer for the evening. John is currently an arts reporter with the Globe and Mail, where he covers authors and books. Before that, though, he was the Globe City columnist for many years, working out of Toronto City Hall. So please join me in welcoming John Barber.
Thanks, Jane, and welcome to you all. This is an angry city, and I can tell by the reception you gave our outgoing mayor. With whom you are obviously very familiar, and you need no introductions from me. What I will do, though, is lay out a little bit of the ground here. We're going to have about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour of questions up here. And then we're going to have some time left over for questions from the audience. And I've been asked, if you do have a question, to write it down. There'll be people who will be collecting the questions, and rather than having a microphone and having you all line up at the end, we'll select questions and read them out at the end. So if anything comes up, and even in the middle of it, if you think that I'm faltering, by all means, fill out one of those pieces of paper and send up a question. In the meantime, we'll get right back to the real meat of it here.
No, you got to turn it on. I like giving instructions to the press.
Lord knows we need it.
Oh, I wasn't implying that at all, John. Just in this particular case, you actually turn these on. There's a little tiny switch.
Got it now. Now we're all here, of course, to discuss the past and your career as mayor, but the one thing that everybody is thinking in this audience now, the one thing they all want me to ask you is, what up next Monday? What are we going to do?
Well, if it doesn't go well, we're all going to move to Calgary. And I actually think, John, if I'd said that any time before yesterday, I would not have got that response.
Yeah. Well, let me speak for the angry majority, who is sadly underrepresented here. It's a bit of a problem. It's a bit of a mess. You've endorsed a candidate who's clearly not going to win, and there are people out there who think that the right thing to do is to back the winner, or who appears to be the winner, Mr. Smithman. Are you prepared to rethink your support of Joe Pantalone in light of the fact that he will not win?
I actually did think about it before doing it. Just to be clear here, I didn't sort of stumble down a set of steps and say, oh, I'll choose Joe because he caught me on the way down. And I would take issue with your thesis. How unlike me to take issue with your thesis. I don't think you can write somebody off like that, particularly not Joe Pantalone, who's been elected for 30 years and has an outstanding campaign organization. And in case people don't realize, building a team in these kind of circumstances is very hard. And he's lucky enough to have the best. And all you have to do is go to Calgary. I mean, I was joking a couple of minutes ago, but they said the same thing about the guy who won in Calgary. And so I think from a practical point of view, you can't make that sort of decision. For myself also, you know, morally and ethically, I want to vote for the kind of city that I believe in. And the truth is, those two other guys are running on platforms that are very similar to each other. The man you just mentioned, for example, basically wants to privatize the TTC. I think that's an outrageous idea. It's failed in every city that it's worked. Look at London. The public-private partnership was a disaster, and they lost so much money, they had to give it back to the government, and the government had to pay all the businesses' debts off. I mean, and, you know, maybe people, because he was part of a Liberal government, sort of remember that. Well, that's not what he's saying in this campaign. And for 2 years, not just in the campaign, he's been tearing down Toronto. I think Toronto is an incredible city. You know, people wouldn't be out here cheering if it wasn't. And we should be supporting people who are running for office who want to build on those achievements and challenge the weaknesses of the city. You know, one of the big issues facing Toronto, and it's not got nearly enough discussion this election, is the increasing disparities of income and the increasing number of neighborhoods and pockets of neighborhoods where there are concentrations of poverty. It's a really serious issue. We've tried to address that through something called priority neighborhoods, which means that we make a priority. Well, thank you. We make a priority to invest in places that have the least. You know, that candidate, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to use his name, wants to get rid of that program. He said everything's a priority. Well, I think 2 years ago he said, my daddy told me that if everything's a priority, you don't have one. Those are his words, not mine. I think it's a ridiculous thing to say. But if you take a city that's trying to invest in places that need it the most and cancel that, you're going to make the problem worse, not better. And that's a huge issue facing Toronto. The only person talking about these kinds of issues and ways to address them is Joe Pantalone. And that's why I'm supporting him. I'm glad I am. And I've actually just recorded some radio ads for him, which, if they're not running today, will be running tomorrow. And I wouldn't count anybody out in this election, because the biggest thing the polls are saying is that people like the kind of city that I've been leading. All the polls say that. Even CFRB's polls say that. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, why somebody who stands for the exact opposite seems to be in first place is a bit baffling. But all the polls say people want the kind of city that Joe Pantalone is advocating, not the kind of city both of the other guys are advocating. And that's why I'm supporting him.
But he's not going to win, and you know that.
I do not know. I wouldn't.
Come on.
People said that to me.
No, you didn't have 11% of the vote a week beforehand. There was a trend and a momentum. We don't have that here, and real voters are going to have to wonder whether there's any point in voting for a guy who's not going to win in light of the alternative, which is that other guy who we haven't mentioned, Mr. Ford. You said Mr. Smitherman was worse than, or more awful, I believe, than Rob
No,
Ford.
I actually didn't say that. The media got it wrong. Oh, what a
No.
shock. What a shock! Unbelievable. What I said was, you don't vote for somebody just because they're slightly less awful than somebody else. I didn't actually name Mr. Smitherman in that comment. I was very careful. I know the rules of libel.
Yeah.
So do you, actually, don't you?
I learned it the hard way, yeah. Never been sued. Now, the Ford campaign, like him or not, it's been a pretty impressive campaign. Would you not agree?
In terms of its organization, I mean, it's not my role as mayor really to analyze people's campaigns, but from what I've seen, it's very organized. There's no question about that.
Mm-hmm. Who do you think is going to win?
Joe Pantalone.
Now, you've seen this campaign, and you sort of had to keep out of it. Is there anything at any particular time that made you want to jump back in and say, stick up your hand and get on your pulpit? In particular, was there?
Only sort of all of it. I mean,